Hello, and welcome to Dani Golden's podcast with the lovely and talented Miss Heidi Bacani, licensed marriage family therapist.
Hi, Dani. Thank you for having me again.
Yes, thank you so much. So today we are very excited. We're going to be talking about HSPs, also known as highly sensitive people.
Mm-hmm.
And just to briefly recap for those of you that are just joining us, last episode we dissected the digital short therapist in need of therapy.
Yes,
Which is what?
I said that was very fun.
Yeah, that was very fun. It took us several times to get it perfect, but we're very happy with the completed product. So please check it out if you haven't done so already. And then we're going to jump right into your disclaimer, Heidi.
Okay, disclaimer time.
Yes.
To the audience and listeners, please don't take the information we provide as medical advice or consider this as a replacement for therapy. The content of our podcast is solely meant to be used for informational, educational, entertainment purposes only. Period.
Thank you.
Okay.
So this episode, Highly Sensitive People, is very special to, well, all the episodes we do, but this one hits a little different chord, as Heidi and I both identify as highly sensitive people. And just something personal I wanted to add is I have felt very different my whole life, as I'm sure a lot of the audience has by viewing and, listening to this content. And when I emotionally vomited my feelings to the therapist featured in Therapist in Need of Therapy Part 3, they were kind enough to recommend a book called The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine and Aron. And yes, so here is the book for all the viewers. Let me just make sure. Okay, I got it in there. And all my tabs, right? So this has just been a great tool for both me and Heidi. And I highly recommend it for the audience if you're looking for to delve into further about your trait.
Yeah, and I think this is actually even a really good book for non-HSPs, non-highly sensitive people.
Yes.
Or clinicians like myself, or anyone who feels like they are not coping well with major life stressors. This is a great book for, I think. This speaks, well to people who are having a hard time with major life changes.
Very well said. Yes. You do not have to be an HSP or a highly sensitive person to understand what we're talking about. This affects everybody. We've all been there. So the next point I wanted to make, I'm just looking at my outline, is I am not the biggest fan of labels. And this is something that Aron talks about. And the reason I bring this up, and I think it's important, is because in the book, she goes out of her way, and I feel like this is an issue that we have in society today where people are very more inclined to be like, I'm this, so I have to stay in this box, and this is my wheelhouse, and I can't go out of my wheelhouse because this is who I am.
Right.
And I think it's very, very important, and one of the reasons why we're here in this life on this planet is to get outside of our comfort zone and acknowledge the cues and digest the information of, oh yes, this is a part of me that I can identify with, this isn't, and whatnot, but then move forward and be able to not stay in that box and not let that be our fenced in area of who we are.
Right. And I think Dr. Aron talks about how because one identifies, because I identify with being HSP, she makes reference to basically, like you said, go outside your comfort zone, for going outside your comfort zone, confronting the fear, confronting the narrative, confronting the myth, the fiction.
Right.
In order for transformation and change to occur, and to not reinforce the fear. she really emphasizes that in her book too, which I think is so helpful to have to read. And it's like, having a mom tell me, like, you can do it, like, try, it's gonna be okay, you're not gonna die, you're not gonna disintegrate, try. And then doing it and seeing, like, I didn't die or disintegrate
Right.
is really beautiful.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, it's like, yeah, so one something I was thinking about when you were saying that, and something I was thinking about when she was when I was reading the book, is that, when you are approached with an opportunity that is outside of your comfort zone, like whether it's you're going on a trip by yourself, or you want to go to a concert and the concert's multiple hours or it's multiple days, and you have this fear factor, it's, another important thing that she talks about is surrounding yourself with people who understand that. So if during that time you need to take a time out, that's completely okay. But just try to put yourself in that situation, because you grow as a human being and expand your world when you do.
Right. Yeah, the world definitely opens up more, I think.
And the world needs you.
Absolutely.
So,
and I like what you just mentioned too. What you touched on is how to love myself through through a situation or event that's making me very uncomfortable, is by surrounding myself with people that understand and that accept me as I am, and love me for all of me, and make space for me, and respect my boundaries when I need time away from the group, or whatever it is that I may be asking for.
yes, I love that you elaborated on that, because it is so true. And I think we can all dig up memories of relationships we've had with people where it wasn't the quite perfect match, right? So we didn't have that support and feel that level of being understood, that I feel is the foundation and essential for a healthy relationship.
Yes.
Whether it's a friendship, a marriage, whatever.
Yes. We'll talk more about loving oneself.
Yes, exactly. That'll be something. Yeah. We've got lots of things to cover. Okay. So, we just talked about all that stuff. And I'm just going over my outline. In today's society, I feel we often look for excuses and reasons to sit on the sidelines. Don't put yourself out there. Your sensitivity is not something to be feared, but it's something to be explored. And it is important that we learn not to judge ourselves for how we react or process the world around us. So one of the biggest pieces of guided information I got was, if you've observed two animals in nature, you don't judge when one animal reacts to the other animal. Whereas I've noticed that in certain situations, I'll judge my behavior. And I was just watching this clip, and it was, I'm forgetting the actor's real name, but the guy who played George Costanza, and he was talking about this, about offering grace. And you don't look at a flower bud, and start screaming at it and be like, why don't you open? Why don't you open? And I feel like I do that to myself sometimes. And I think it's really important to be reminded that that's not healthy. And we don't do that in nature. So why are we doing that to ourselves?
Right.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. That's a really good way to look at it. Look at how to ourselves also, I think, through our sensitivities, or through difficult times.
Yeah, and our frustrations, right? Okay, so let's dive right in, and let's talk about the science of highly sensitive people.
Well, that was actually a good segue, because you brought up the whole the natural world around us, and how we behave, and how we treat, and how we respect and appreciate a flower, whatever stage it's in.
Right.
Animals have HSP too. Like, there are, in when we have I have two dogs. I have a Norwegian elk hound, big 80-pound dog, and I have a little Swedish Malhound, and he's 26 pounds. And my little guy is he's HSP for sure, because he's the kind of dog that will, like, if a bee is near him, or like anything, a fly, if a fly lands on him, he's gonna, like, turn around and look at his butt and be like, what do you
Oh my God, that's totally Barkley too.
So me.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's funny to watch.
So in nature, yes, like HSP definitely exists even in nature. Um, so I just love that. I love that about Dr. Aron, how she brings that point up in her book about how animals have this trait as well. So
Yes.
HSP is, how I understand it, is personality traits that humans have. HSP is a personality trait, and we all fall on the range of sensitivity somewhere, and some of us are less and some of us are more. And things like environment, like the caregiver that raises us and how much we're overstimulated by them or understimulated by them is going to affect how we how sensitivity is brought out, um, as well as genetics. Um, sensitivity can be inherited when you look at parents, the difference in parents and which traits you develop, from parents, that is inherited. And also, it's also in how brain development occurs, is how sensitivities or people with HSP fall on the range. They have a fully formed, according to Dr. Aron, they have a fully formed system in the brain that I think it's the part that is inhibited, like behavior inhibition, the part that, wait, let me back up. I think it's actually the behavioral activation by, I don't want to misquote her. Hang on one second.
No, this is,
I don't want to misquote her.
you do
Okay,
you.
Here we go. Behavior activation. So behavior activation, let me back up. Her research on the brain and how HSP develops in the brain, um, is based on some research that says that, like, the brain is made up of two systems. One system is the behavior activation system, and the second system is the behavior inhibition system. The behavior activation system is developed by 2 months of age. Like, probably not like fully developed, but like it's developed by 2 months of age. So we continue to like develop it throughout life, but it's amazing that like by 2 months we already have that feature in our personality or like our behavior. And then the other part of the other system in the brain that's developed is the behavior inhibition, which is developed by 6 months of age. So we have these two very separate systems in the brain that help us function in life. They're and we have them so at such a young age. The behavioral activation system is the part of the brain that tells us to take action, to like walk, to reach for something at 2 months old, to chew the food at 2 months old, to look for mom at 2 months old. And then the pause to check system is the system or the part of the brain that tells us to be careful, that's fire, that's hot, that's dangerous. So like take a step
Don't
back.
touch that stove,
Don't touch,
right?
yeah, don't touch a stove. And the people the people with HSP are the ones that have a more developed pause to check system, basically. So that's a little bit of background or insight into like why people that have HSP I think because they're part of the brain that is the pause to check system is a little bit more developed.
Okay, so I just have this story I was thinking of when you were saying that. So
Okay.
to like dive into it and give an example for the
Uh-huh.
listeners and the viewers, um, would that pause to check
Check.
system be described as, would this be a good example? So when I was really young and I lived back east, there was a snowstorm, and I was determined to swim in the snow. And I
Uh-huh.
don't know, age 2 to 4, probably age range. And so I went and put on my swimsuit, and then I put on my little ski boots
Uh-huh.
and opened the front door. And, or no, I actually was demanded that I go outside to swim in the snow, and I wanted to
Uh-huh.
go in the front yard. And this was before I looked at the snow, and my mom said, was, no, you cannot do that. You cannot swim in
Right.
the snow. Don't go out there in your swimsuit. And I was like, no, very adamant that I
Yeah.
do this.
Right.
And then once she put me on the front step of the, I was looking at the snow, and I remember as a child observing, this
Uh-huh.
isn't what I was imagining in my head. In my head, I was imagining it was going to be fluffy and I could swim through it, but this looked hard and crunchy. So would that
Yeah.
be the pause to check versus just diving in there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good, really good example of the positive check system. Yeah.
Okay.
You were aware of, well, you observed like the quality of the texture, the quality of
The
the
snow,
snow,
right.
and decided like too
This
crunchy.
doesn't match my imagination.
Right. Great. Yep. So
Okay.
the HSPs definitely are the ones that are gonna like refrain or hold back from acting on impulse, um, oftentimes to uh, avoid something painful or fearful. And I think this translates over into adult relationships, you know, childhood, adolescent, adult relationships where I know for me, like there have been times where I may have um, really hesitated to go into a relationship with someone, or hesitated to like initiate communication with someone, or said no to random opportunities to do things with socially with people. So
That's
yeah.
a wonderful example, because I can definitely think of that. And I can also think of examples when I didn't listen to that system. And I mean, I paused and I checked, but then I was
Right.
like, no, I'm going to go forward. And
Right.
then I went forward, and it wasn't to the betterment of me. It was
Right.
definitely
Right.
something I should have paused and turned and walked away from.
Yeah, and Dr. Aron talks about how that is the value that an HSP brings into um, a family system, or a marriage, or any relationship, because they're the more cautious of the two individuals maybe, and they're gonna proceed a little bit more with caution when making decisions sometimes. So it's a
Yeah, I
good trait
like.
to have.
No, it is. And I love how she refers to HSPs as the advisor class as opposed to the warrior class. And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know,
Right.
that
Right.
pause to check system, and also the ability to be, to process the subtle stimuli of everything around us and be able
Sure.
to form it into this kind of like put this puzzle together and be like, okay, well, if I go that way, this is going to happen, and play the tape.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah, the warriors are the behavior activated individuals in society. Yeah, whereas the HSPs are like you said, the advisors, the creative people. Um, so yeah, there's value for sure in both those
Absolutely.
types of people, of course. So, but I think because of our society, we are stigmatized to think that people that are sensitive are not inadequate in some way, or not good enough.
Weak.
And right. um, Dr. Aron also talks about how in other cultures, like Asian culture, um, HSPs are thought of as the more highly intelligent, like people in the community. because they're a little more restrained, they're a little more like shy, I think is the adjective that's used
Yes,
to
she
describe
uses
them.
that a lot. Hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, good stuff. She writes about I think she does a nice job of really giving appropriate praise to people that have this trait.
No, I definitely agree. And it was validating for some of the experiences. And so the examples she used were validating to some of the past experiences I've had. And
Yeah.
it was a way for me to understand and view how I navigated that situation in a way that I had maybe beat myself up for in the past, but made sense based on having this trait. So that was a
Yeah.
nice feeling.
Right. Very valid. Yeah. I got the same exact, I had the same exact experience. It felt very validating for me too when I was
Hmm.
reading her book. Like, you're good.
It's okay. It's okay. We all need that, right?
I give it to myself often,
I
actually.
should give it to myself more. I try. Sometimes I can probably be the warrior class with myself.
Oh, I've definitely seen that in you. You're the take charge person in the group too, Dani. So yeah, good
Yeah,
book.
so it's kind of like a mixed bag going on over here.
Yeah,
Anything else you wanted to add to that? That was wonderful.
I don't know. I think that's just a really like brief synopsis. I mean, I could be a little more clear about the two brain systems, but I think the audience will get the gist of it. And if
Yeah, and
not,
I
please
think
go get her book because it's really, it's really good.
exactly. That's what I was going to say. If not, if they have any questions, feel free to get the book. We both highly recommend it. I read it twice because I read it a long time ago, and then I wanted to reread it for this,
Right.
so I could accurately speak to
Right.
it. Of course. Okay. Anything else before we jump to the next part?
I'm good, Dani. Should we move on to digital shorts?
Let's do it. So, for those of you who have or have not seen it, there's a digital short on danigolden.com called Don't Be So Sensitive. And so, we are going to dissect that right now. And I did this short because I feel like these experiences have happened to me. And this was sort of my way of communicating with people who have felt the same way or experienced the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the content I put out there is stuff that when I was going through these interesting life experiences, really was looking for validation from the world or someone who was openly talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my way to make people feel not so alone in their experiences. And I think we can all identify with each part of those scenes in some capacity.
Sure. Yeah. If
Yeah.
it Sheila, the first scene is
Yeah.
that.
So the first part is a friend is walking up to me. I see her at a coffee shop, and they feel inclined to tell me that a mutual other friend hates me.
Right. Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So no one likes to receive negative information, even if we don't have the best relationship with someone or we may not jive. Let's just simply put it that way, right? It's not an enjoyable experience to be told that someone doesn't like you. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to care or you're going to change who you are. It's just when that information is told, what is told in the situations when that's happened in real life, when that information is told to me, it often feels like I'm blindsided. So I'm more dealing with being blindsided by information I wasn't expecting to receive, and how do I digest that, rather than this person doesn't like you,
Right.
and it often feels like the party that is deciding to share that information with me is looking for a reaction of sorts,
Right.
almost like they want me to match their emotions.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, their
Yeah.
negativity, and feed it. And I don't want to feed that fire. I'm not interested.
Yeah, that's where good boundary work comes in, I think, that you're describing, where if someone is inviting you to engage in um, negative behavior, like talking badly about someone or saying negative things about someone, to protect yourself, to protect myself, to keep myself safe. Yeah, I disengaged. I disengage, or I don't accept the invitation in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you're not the first person to not like me, and you're not going to be the last. So it's like, what would you
Right.
like me to do with this information?
Right.
There's really, in my, we've talked about this and we'll share with the audience, but Heidi was pretty brilliant in saying that in identifying and observing that she's a slow processor. And so when we were having one of our offline conversations, I was thinking about that for myself and really paying attention to how I digested information. And
Yeah.
I started realizing that I'm the same way. And I think when those situations happen and someone walks up to me and they're like, hey, I ran into this person Sheila the other day, and she hates you. I'm more stuck in, is this really happening? What is, I don't even, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
haven't even gotten out
You
of the
should.
starting gate. I'm just
Right.
like, what is going on right now? Am I in
Right.
some
Right.
Seinfeld episode? Like, I'm just not, where am I? And then, later I'll get out of the gate and it's already over. The moment's over. And then,
Right.
so I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting observation about being a slow processor, and how that can actually be beneficial.
I think so. I think so. I mean, I think that when I take the time to explore what has happened to me during an interaction later, I'm more able to come up with a response to it that is thoughtful and accurate versus like in the moment, it's a reaction of confusion. I'm shutting down now. I'm disassociating. I'm not like, I'm totally disengaging because it's too much. And I think Dr. Aron talks about this overstimulation um,
Right.
that occurs for HSPs. She talks about how someone can become like a child develops this trait when they have an overstimulating parent or an understimulating parent. So in that digital short, this woman that is talking to you about how much Sheila hates you, like I think you're getting overwhelmed by her negativity and her intense, like she was like really like passionate about this fact, right?
Right. And wanted engagement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's more like the turtle. Like, I was out and I was hanging out, and then I just went back into my shell. And I'm like, we're not home right now. Like, I've decided Dani's not home right now. You can leave your name and number, and she may or may not call you back. Right? That's what's happening.
That's all that's happening.
That's all that's happening right now.
Yeah.
She's left the building.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, I love the way that you put that. Yeah. And then the second part of that short, I'm at the dog park,
Yes.
and you just talked about having two dogs, and I have a dog and have had several, have had the privilege of having several in my life,
Yeah.
because I just don't know what I would do without one. And the friend is suggesting that I don't pick up
Right.
Barkley's dog poop. And of course I'm going to,
Of course.
because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
So that was, but we've all been in situations where, and it doesn't even have to be about dog poop, but where, as a dog owner, where another dog owner will try to tell you how to treat your dog, or there's like, and this could be its own episode, right, where we get into that is the reason for that part of the thing, is like touching upon, everyone's going to have an opinion about everything that you do. Like,
Uh-huh.
hey, don't do it, nobody's doing it, don't do it. And I know what's going to prevent me from not, I mean, I am that cheesy and caring that it probably would prevent me from, like, it would be something that I would think about before I went to bed. So like, I know what's going to allow me to sleep comfortably at night, and I'm going to behave accordingly. Right. If it requires me to go a little out of my way and do something that um, it may be easier not to pick it up, but I'm going to feel better about myself picking it up, because I know that if the roles were reversed and someone had left their dog's poop out and I happened to step in it, or even not, I would just be, turned off by that. How lazy are you that you can't pick it up?
Right.
You know, you have this responsibility, literally clean up your side of the street.
Right. Yeah, I was asking because I think that was an example of you drawing a boundary with that woman, you know, by saying like it's the right thing to do. I'm going to do
Right.
that.
Even if they didn't agree.
Yeah, even if they didn't agree, exactly.
Yeah. And then the third part of that, I am telling one of my guy friends that I'm kind of not, I'm sort of venting to one of my guy friends and saying, you know, I wasn't comfortable with something that Tom said. And what I've learned about myself and the direction I gave my friend Jesus, who's acting in this part of the scene, is that, and something that works for me well, because I have a lot of male friends. They'll joke with me. And that helps me because of what we were talking about with being overstimulated. So when I'm absorbing a piece of information that may be a little bit more difficult for me to digest, I always, and we talked about this on the last episode, but I use humor as my main calming agent. So when Jesus says the Cat Williams quote, we only have, you know, X amount of haters, you got to increase it. I gave him that direction because for me, dissecting it further doesn't always help. And so, yes, there's the element that, you know, he's acknowledging my sensitivity and also saying, okay, we're not going to feed this. We're going to diffuse it this way. And it goes back to, again, what we talked about in episode 2. We just slowly covered, you know, like covered it a little bit, but the importance of humor in healing.
Yes, that was a good I think like interaction to show how you were trying to do that.
Okay. So what does it mean to be a highly sensitive person? We talked about the science behind it. We talked about, I did mention that it's our ability to process subtle stimuli in a different way that impacts how we see the world and what we react to, which is what you said. What it means to be over aroused and how we navigate that, like we were just talking about in the digital short. And what we said at the beginning, it is okay to operate within the world in a way that makes you comfortable. And this was something that she was talking about in the book that Dr. Aron was talking about in the book that, and I used to experience this. So when I would go to networking events, which are not my favorite, I'm not the best at small talk. I seldom stay on the surface. She was talking about, you know, awkward silences, for example, and always having the perfect comeback. And so we had already talked about when you're a slower processor, it might feel like you're frozen for a second. So you might not have that, feel like you have that perfect comeback. But sometimes, and my takeaway from what she was saying is that just being you and having your natural response is the best way to go. So if it is an awkward silence, that's okay. You don't have to fill the air, right? Absolutely. Or feel like you have to say the perfect thing. Like if you're in the moment digesting it and don't say anything at all, sometimes saying nothing is the best comeback that you can come up with, right?
Totally. And silence is normal in conversation because oftentimes silence means so many things. It could mean like we're processing, like you're saying, or that we need more time to understand, you know, what's going on. It gives people a chance to think about what they're hearing too. So pauses are actually a good thing, not a bad thing in conversation.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, it's like when you're with someone that you're really comfortable with and you can be silent together. Yeah. I love that. You know, you don't have to fill the air with nonsense or just, meaningless conversation just to feel like comfortable. All HSPs are created differently. And yes, like just because you act differently and might not behave in the norm doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. So yes, it is learning to love yourself despite your differences because we're all different.
Right. Using my tools for emotion regulation so that I can bring my sensitivity down from like a 10 to a 2. Did you want to say more? I wanted to go into like strategies for how to deal with overload or over arousal.
No, go for it,
Okay.
please.
Okay. So I see these strategies as self-care, self-love, and Dr. Aron does a beautiful job. She's so good at bringing up how to handle situations that are over arousing or overstimulating for a person. Her suggestions are reframing the situation, trying to see the situation or the narrative in a different way, whatever the story is we're telling ourselves, so that we can feel more comfortable, less activated by the situation.
Like what we were talking about in the digital short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Repeat a phrase, prayer or mantra that through daily practice you have to associate with deeper inner calm and peace. This is a suggestion that I make to myself all day long, where like if I'm feeling, if I'm aware of a feeling of being overwhelmed, I will remind myself to breathe in, breathe out. I'll do the hard work of saying breathe in, breathe out, like numerous times, to slow down my heart rate, to send a signal to my central nervous system to help me calm down, to regulate my feelings. I like that suggestion.
I love that.
Yeah. Witnessing your arousal. That's actually, for me, that's step one, is the awareness of it, which requires the ability through practice of noticing when I'm feeling uncomfortable. Like maybe my speech is getting a little, like my voice is getting a little thinner, or like my breath is getting a little shorter, or my heart is beating a little faster. When I get those physical cues, that's when I'm able to use these strategies or tools to help me emotionally regulate. So that, for me, that's really step one, is witnessing the over arousal. Love the situation. I think this suggestion goes hand in hand with her suggestion to reframe. She talks about how if we can't love the situation, love yourself in the state that you are. Like, try to be kind to yourself, is what she's saying. Which sort of, for me, like goes along with the idea of reframing, like seeing myself as an okay person because I'm feeling like all these feelings or feeling overwhelmed.
I feel like that's hard sometimes
Oh,
when you're in
totally.
the, yeah.
Totally. This is all
But I
hard
love
work.
that. No, I know. No, this is great. I love this.
Nothing easy about any of this
Right.
that she's suggesting, for sure. But it's practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about practice, where the more we practice it, the more automatic, it becomes. It doesn't get easier, but we're like quicker, more efficient at getting to
Yes.
emotion regulation. And then her last strategy that she talks about is, and these are all like behavioral and cognitive strategies, just to be clear. She talks about loving your arousal, against that, like loving the situation, like love that you are as unique as you are and as different as you are, I think, is what she's emphasizing. All right, so those are her cognitive strategies. And then her physical strategies are, she suggests music to change your mood, which I think is a good one.
I always use music.
Me too. Like in the car, I know for me, like when I'm having a tough time and I know I'm about to drive, like I'm like, okay, turn the radio on quickly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So music, she suggests get out of the situation. And I often recommend this to clients, where I'll tell them, like, if you're feeling anxious, overstimulated, understimulated, bored, get up from where you're at, go get a glass of water, like change your scenery, go outside. That is going to help my mood.
Barkley does that, and I noticed that he does that when he's uncomfortable, and he'll just like
Right.
move and change situations, and I'll stay in a situation longer because I think sometimes being able to think and analyze, you can get stuck more.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
think that's exactly why she's recommending this, because she doesn't want you to
mhm,
feel stuck.
right.
Close your eyes to shut out some of the stimulation. I
Oh,
think that's a good suggestion. Take frequent breaks. Go outdoors. Use water to take the stress away. Drinking water. Take a walk. Calm your breathing. Adjust your posture to be more relaxed and confident. Move and smile softly. I love the last one. Smile softly. Like these are really, really good suggestions. Um,
great. Yeah.
these are the kind of things I need to write down on a post-it note and like put on a mirror or like somewhere where I see that post-it note regularly so that I can be reminded like I have all these tools. I can do all these things to take care of myself.
That's a great
So,
suggestion.
all self-love, all self-care and self-love
Hmm.
action that we can take.
I love that.
Yeah. More thoughts
Uh,
on loving oneself with HSP?
um, no, I think it can feel lonely, and I think this isn't just for HSPs. I've had conversations with my girlfriends that would not consider themselves as sensitive as I am, and it's not a bad thing, or it's just, and it's probably one of the reasons why we get along is I just get along, I you admire different characteristics in different
Right.
people. And yeah, and we've even had that conversation where it can be lonely sometimes to have an observation about something, and to feel like you're the only one in that moment observing it. And so those are really great tools for everybody to
Absolutely. Yeah.
utilize. Hmm.
Right. Non HSPs as well.
Yes, exactly. And before we get into your PSA, I just want to share the story that with I had this really interesting conversation with my cousin, who I feel like is very even keeled
Mm-hmm.
emotionally. Um, and we were sitting having cocktails and some appetizers, and I was complimenting her and just, on her life, and just saying, as an observer, I just feel like you've done a brilliant job of navigating your life beautifully, despite the obstacles that you've encountered. And it was interesting. Her response was, um, that while I was judging myself for having highs and lows, and kind of being this ocean as opposed to this calm lake,
Mm-hmm.
there was this admiration that she had, because she said, well, my lows might be lower, but my highs are higher. And there's
Mm-hmm.
something beautiful about that. And I'd never looked at it myself or my behavior through her eyes.
Right.
And so it was this beautiful moment of mutual admiration for each other's qualities and our
Yeah.
differences. And I just think it's just a reminder that sometimes it might be helpful to look at yourself like a stranger, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
There's mutual envy.
right,
People have mutual
right,
envy. Yeah. When we're envying someone else, they're envying us in some way too,
right.
for sure.
Yeah, we don't always think about that.
Nope.
Okay, let's jump into your PSA.
Okay, PSA time. So the therapy office of episode 3 is Alliant Couple and Family Clinic, and this was a nod to you actually because you live in San Diego, and I wanted to find something in San Diego.
Thank you,
Um,
Heidi.
yeah. Um, and as it turns out, they have a location in Long Beach also, which is in my neighborhood. So it was meant to be.
The silent.
Alliant Couple and Family Clinic. Their phone number is 858-547-9803. 858-547-9803. And their San Diego office is located at 10065 Old Grove Road, Suite 102, San Diego 92131. And then their Long Beach location is 4281 Catella Avenue, Suite 207, Los Alamitos 90720. And what I discovered from their website was that these public service announcements are only going to be for people looking for low cost or free therapy, and this is a low cost therapy location office. They have trainees and associates that provide therapy, but just because you're seeing a trainee or associate doesn't mean you're not getting a great service, because they're working with a whole team of licensed people. The trainees charge anywhere between $40 a session to $130 a session, and the marriage and family therapist associates are charging $80 to $150. And I think when you call these places, if you give them a little bit of background on your finances, they will even slide down further, possibly. So I think it's worth going through the trouble of like talking to someone and giving your story. And they're by appointment only. And you can find them on the internets under Alliant Couple and Family Clinic.
Perfect. And I will also put that information in the copy below this podcast so that, listeners and viewers can find it there.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Heidi. So we're going to wrap up this episode with today's question, which is, I acknowledged at the beginning of the episode that we're both highly sensitive people. And so I think it would be really helpful for you, Heidi, to share a time when you realized that you were different or learned that you were a highly sensitive person.
Yeah. It was in my 20s when I discovered this about myself, this trait that I have and still have, and I'm okay with it. I think it came, that awareness came to me when I would sit with my therapist in his office for the first year. I think I pretty much all I did was cry, like every session. It took me like a good year to get comfortable being vulnerable and revealing who I truly was, because I felt so not okay with who I was and so different and so so, for lack of a better way of putting it, like struggling with like how to be a social person, how to be a social human being. And on top of that, like going to undergrad, being in school around so many people, like totally overstimulated by college and my first time living on my own and dating, all those things made me so overwhelmed. And Ruben would make space for it. He radically accepted where I was at, and it taught me to radically accept where I am, and gave me that internal, the good mom, or the good dad that I needed to be able to develop the skill of like, I see you, I see you having a hard time, and it's okay. Like this is temporary. It's not forever. Developing all these like internal phrases that I could reassure myself with. So I think, it was when I observed that every time I went into session and he would ask me questions and I would just start crying, it made me understand about myself that I am really different from most people, and that he taught me that it's okay. I don't think I've seen other therapists, and I saw one psychiatrist at one point, for medication, but like that never came up. I think it's something that I kind of self-diagnosed. And HSP is not a diagnosis. It's actually just a personality trait, like all the other personality traits. So it's not something that like you can treat with medication necessarily, or like um, it's not something covered by insurance. You know, everyone has something, and that's just happens to be the thing that I have. So he never said like you have this or you have that. He just thought you're you're a developing, growing, you know, human being, and we're not going to like label you as, you know, anything in particular because you're still developing. So yeah, never came up like as a specific topic during my sessions. It's something I became more aware of later in life when I started developing these strategies for coping, I think.
That's Thank you for sharing. That's very interesting and I think extremely helpful for the viewers and listeners, because in some sense, you know, you crying is being completely vulnerable. I mean, not in some sense, in a complete sense, that is you
Right,
being that way. And, you know, digesting, I'm using that word a lot, but, you know, the breadth of who you are. And I think
mm-hmm.
it's kind of that theme of breaking down to break through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's,
Yeah, good way
you
to put it.
know, right, really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote this in one of my pieces, no mud, no bud. It's not this beautiful, like I've seen clips
Right.
online where people are like, what spiritual awakening looks like, or people think it looks
Mm-hmm.
like versus what it really is. And it is, it's sitting in an office crying. It's having these uncomfortable conversations with people
Right. Right.
and yourself.
Right.
And I just think it's important. And then also to acknowledge that it is a trait, it's not a diagnosis, it's just an observation.
Right.
And I was thinking of that movie Soul, that Pixar movie. I think it's Pixar, where they
Uh-huh.
put the theory in the film is that they put different souls in different tents to make them like different people, like give them
Right.
different traits and characteristics. And I was thinking there's an
Right.
HSP
Oh
tent,
yeah.
you
I'm sure
know.
there is.
Right,
I've
right.
never been
So,
watched
you
it.
know,
Look for it though. I'm
right.
sure it's there.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I was just thinking about that. But thank you so much for sharing, Heidi. It's always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Danny, and I want to thank you too for your courage. You know, as much as like this topic is stigmatized, I think,
Yeah.
you know, you're doing a really good job at like making it normal, I think, by talking about it and by sharing your experience as well. Takes a lot of courage. So
Oh.
I want to thank you as a participant.
Well, thank you. I could not do this without you. Having your wisdom, your knowledge, and your expertise is incredibly appreciated,
Yeah.
helpful, and necessary. And I think, you
Happy
know,
to be here.
having what?
Happy to be here. Happy to have the conversation.
Yeah, and you know, if what we can, the information we can put out there can help people, you know, I know you and I, that's what our goal is like just to make people feel not alone. You know, unfortunately, I feel like we live in a society where we're getting more in our quarters and not coming together as much. And so if people are going to stay in their homes, at least listen to this or watch this and know that it's okay to be who you are. You're beautiful, you're special, you're loved, and you know, we're all experiencing this difficult thing called life together.
Right.
So, and I think I'll end on that. And please tune in for episode 4 where we dissect the digital short, um, where I'm at a dinner with a future potential in-law and what transpires in that situation and how we all can relate to that kind of situation where we may not get along with potential in-laws and what that looks like and boundary work and all that good stuff. So thank you so much for your time and we appreciate you.